Hey, babies. Hey, babies. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Happy Tuesday, everyone. Feel like I need to say something in advance of this show today. It's possible that a couple things may feel a little off dependent how quickly the Commanders cut people today. So,
Okay.
I want to ask them nicely. Reveal all the news at noon, please. That'd be very helpful for me as we're doing
Sure.
a primer of Cutdown Day. And as of Monday, they hadn't done anything major. So, unlike a couple teams that did release a couple names that are out there, they haven't. So, if something happens at 10:47 a.m. that might not go too well, and you may be like, hey man, I just looked at Twitter and yeah man, and so just don't give me that, okay? And if you talk like that, like I don't want to hear from you anyway. If you're Chong, don't at me about anything. So there you go.
Do the kids even know who Cheech and Chong are these days? It took me
No,
a second.
no,
Yeah, it's a bad reference
no.
by you.
5 people know what I'm talking about with Chong. Actually, I don't know. My audience probably knows who Chong is. I'm gonna go with they know who Chong is.
Okay. Normally you don't reference one of them though. That was weird. I'm just calling you out on
True.
that. Yeah.
It's true, but you knew what I was talking about, and that's the important thing right now. You
it
knew
took
that Chong is part of Cheech and Chong.
it. It took me a second, but no one says Daryl Hall or John Oates. It's usually one.
Yeah,
It's usually
yeah.
the both. It's usually both
Hey,
of them.
who do you
So,
like? You like Hall?
yeah. Right.
Hey, like, what are you talking about?
Right.
Of Hall and Oates. Yeah.
You know,
Oh, you got to say both of them. If you don't do that, I don't know what you're talking about.
I have a tiny side thing on Hall and Oates that I heard about over the weekend. Did you know that they've never referred to themselves as Hall and Oates? Did you know this?
What do they refer to themselves as?
Daryl
Daryl and
Hall and
John?
Daryl Hall and John Oates. Full
Daryl Hall
names.
and John Oates?
Every single album cover is Daryl Hall and John Oates. There's not a single album that says Hall and Oates on it. Did you know that?
They're weird. Like they're so crazy successful and they clearly dislike each other to such a degree that they just have put up with it for so long and it just got to the end of the line. Like their divorce is still happening, right? Like they're still refusing to work with one another and
Yeah.
suing each other and all of that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like they're done. We're in the end game now. Like eventually we're gonna hear about the divorce being finalized, but yeah, it's done.
I mean, this one gets split 50-50, right? Like there's no
well, don't
we're not arguing that, are we? In court that like Hall gets more than Oates? Like we're not doing that, are we?
don't tell them that. Like apparently Daryl wrote more than Hall or
Oh, of
whatever, and
course he did.
there's a lot of Oates shouldn't perform the songs that Daryl wrote. There's a lot of this going on, and people are like,
I don't think either one of them should perform the songs if it's not them together.
I mean, I don't think you're wrong. I will say this though, like Daryl used to do a show though where he'd perform his songs with other artists, and that was a good show actually. Like it was a good concept, but
Like, does Paul Simon do Simon and Garfunkel songs? Maybe.
I would think he does, right?
Maybe he
I mean,
does.
I would think so
Does Sting
because
do police? Well, I mean, that's a little different.
yeah, that's a little different.
Does he do police songs? Maybe.
He's
Does
got to. How does he not do police songs? Those are all timers.
Like you haven't played Roxanne in 33 years.
Yeah,
dude.
no, yeah.
Let's go.
There's no way.
Come on, one time.
Yeah.
All right, let's stick to sports. Today's the day. Today's the day. Cut down day. For the Commanders, probably as aforementioned, you haven't heard anything prominent yet because I don't know who that prominent name would be. Like it would be really, really out of left field, honestly, if someone of real major namesake was released today. I'd be very surprised. Like there's nobody I can literally think of, and maybe they'll surprise me today. But there is like literally nobody I can think of that's like a prominent name on this team that feels unsafe to me. So that's probably why we're sitting here going, yeah, I had to do the preemptive. Well, if they say something 10 minutes before you hear this, don't at me about it. But I'll be surprised, wouldn't you? Like if some big name popped up all of a sudden that gets released today.
Well, and the follow-up question before answering that is who's the big name? I mean, if the quote unquote big name is Jamin Davis, right? We've talked about him at length about why they would keep him or not keep him, right?
Right. I mean, like we're not like Yeah, I don't know who it would be. Like
Right.
there isn't one that really comes to mind that would be a big major namesake. And in general, that kind of doesn't happen around the league either. I mean, people are like, oh, Boston Scott. And it's like, well, I mean, like, yeah, he's pretty good. He's a name. He played on a good team. He's a third running back, like what you've heard
Well,
of him. Like, okay, you've used him in Madden. I get it. Like you've heard of him. All right.
well,
I understand.
on that front too, like I saw Schefter tweet out, "Oh, the Broncos are expected to. This was last night. They expect to release or trade Samaje Perine." I was like, that dude is still in the league, like
Yeah.
as a big enough contributor that like it was worth
Yeah.
a tweet. Like that. Like that's what I meant though. Like I know he was still playing. I just meant it in terms of, oh, we're tweeting about Samaje Perine in 2024. Like I don't know who these big names are at this point.
Yeah, I saw on Twitter because I guess there's some question whether John Mechie's going to make it with the Texans. So I saw on Twitter people trying to link any receiver here,
Sure.
and all of a sudden, like that name popped up. Would that be a big name? Like he, unfortunately, I think it was cancer his rookie year, like derailed his rookie year, and then he came back, and they actually have a lot of receivers now. Like all of a sudden, out of the blue, they have a lot of receivers. Nico Collins, very good. Tank Dell, very good. They just got Diggs. So, I don't know if fall out of favor would be the way to go, but like he is a talent. But again, like, does that fall in line with big name? I guess maybe because he was a high draft pick and we haven't really seen what he can do. But, I guess that would fall into the category. Oftentimes this time of year, you're shocked if it's a name that isn't somebody that's been around the block that was on a non-guaranteed deal in the first place. And if you really, paid attention, you would realize that they were never really guaranteed anything in the first place. So I don't expect much there. So why don't we just kind of go through the position groups with them? Because, I do think there are some tough decisions for this team to make. And I really want to start here, which is interior D line, because I do think it is the one spot that it is possible that the Commanders could seriously consider getting some kind of asset back, because they have what I think are a couple of valuable backups, John Ridgeway and Fedarian Mathis. I have a hard time buying both make the team. I think it's just going to be hard due to the numbers with Payne, Allen, Newton, certainties to make the team. How many interior defensive linemen are you going to keep? And then secondarily, like Ridgeway and Mathis are, traditional big men. And we always think that that's an important role. But think back to what is the criticism of the Dallas defense was they were more into penetrative defensive tackles, which is why I think they love Payne and Allen a lot, why they're going to love Newton. But they weren't going after the big, stout, run-stuffing type players. So not to say they're not scheme fits, but they're not prototypical players that he's looked for in the past. So numbers and that reasoning, and I know Ridgeway, I know there's interest out of him if they're not going to retain him, and I think they are. And with Mathis, he is a second-round pick, so that one I'm watching today. Like, what happens at that position group?
Yeah, and I mean, I think not unlike last week when Dotson got traded, right? Remember all the not the beat reporters, but the national reporters were saying, oh, these teams are going to start taking chances on wide receivers because of the pay rate now, right? Because wide receivers are expensive. Tackles have turned into the same thing. Like, if you have one, luckily there's two here, but if you have one, you're paying them big money. Yeah. It's worth the risk for some of these teams to actually give up an asset to get someone that has the talent like that. So yeah, I'm with you. Like, one of them should probably be traded. And I don't think they're going to get cut. I would think someone's going to take a risk by moving an asset or a low round pick or something.
Yeah. I think one of the two is going to make it. And I think that the question is going to be, which one do they choose between? And I wonder if an offer helps make that decision for them, or if it's clear to them. Because I will say this about Mathis, like the other day, like he's, he got hurt his rookie year. He was coming off of it his second year. But for someone his size, it's often you don't see him making a lot of plays out there. All of a sudden the other night, and I know it's a preseason game, but he was totally bought in and into it and making some plays. It was a really nice sign for me to see, like, he wants this, and I think like that was really reassuring to me. So I do think it's a tough decision. I mean, he was a high draft pick for a reason. He's the biggest guy on the field, so, and if it clicks for him, this is someone who could be a difference making type player, at least as a backup for Payne and Allen. We're looking for rotational guys. Like, there's a reason why Payne and Allen didn't play in the preseason. They're trying to actually limit the load on those guys. Like, they want them at their best and at their finest because they know they're going to rely a lot on them. They need people like Mathis or Ridgeway to take snaps away from them and not feel a huge drop off. So I'm going to see what direction they go. I think that's a really interesting one. I think the other one that's really tough, I think is a tough decision, is safety. It's going to be dependent on how many they keep. Dominique Hampton, who was a draft pick, nobody likes to cut their draft picks. When they moved him to linebacker, I think that was partially because they see him kind of like Jeremy Chin, similar build, can kind of play both ways. But I think part of it also was the linebacking core right now might have an open spot to fit him into it. And the safeties just kind of don't. Like between Martin and Chin, who are clear starters, Butler, who's gotten a tremendous amount of run, Reeves, who is just an outstanding special teamer and a guy who's really been throwing his body around here, I think, to try to prove to this staff that he's more than just a special teamer for them. And then this emergence of Tyler Owens, the undrafted free agent, it puts Derek Forrest in question here. And this was somebody who, when they came here, Quinn and Witt, I went, oh, you're going to love that dude. Like, that dude plays like a missile. He fits exactly the prototype of the type of player they would like. Then he had a hamstring injury early in camp. Then Owens emerged. I don't know. So I think they got a tough decision in that position group right now too, I think.
I think this one, though, has the opposite effect of like the D tackle wide receiver thing, though. We saw this offseason, safeties are not in demand, right? All these teams.
Yeah, Cam Curl got nothing close to what I think he and his camp thought they were going to get. So they surmised that market well. They wanted a lot of money. Peter said no. And we were all freaking out. The Cam Curl's not here. And then he went to the Rams and he got nothing even close to what he was asking for on the market.
And so what I'm getting at here is it's probably going to be easier to stash one or two of these guys on the practice squad as well, because if the market is dictating that these guys aren't getting big money and everyone was kind of content with moving on from their guys or signing someone else, like the Commanders weren't the only ones to let their safety go. There were a lot of movement when it came to safety this offseason. So I actually look at this position group and I'm with you. There's a logjam on the back end there. At least you know who the starters are. But with that logjam, I guess the other thing is you don't really have to risk losing them. I don't think safety is going to be of concern for teams to pluck other guys. So I'm actually not as concerned here if they've got to move guys on the practice squad is what I'm getting
at. The other
thing
they can do, and they could try this, and it's risky, but like everybody values their own guys, and they're like, you can't let him go. He's going to end up getting picked up by somebody else. But Tyler Owens is an undrafted rookie free agent, and he's looked great in this camp, and he's probably earned a spot. But if you feel like there's just too many people and you don't want to lose someone like Defoe, then maybe you release him now, tell him you are definitively on our practice squad. You're going to get called up in a second if we have an injury. And oh, by the way, if another team comes calling, tell us and we'll do something about it.
Yeah.
So I have a feeling like that's a possibility here with him. Possibility.
Yeah. No, I agree.
The other one on defense to me is there going to be a surprise at corner? Because it seems to me like Forbes, Sandra Still, St. Juice, Michael Davis, and I think Igbenogany are pretty much locks, I think. But Tariq Castro-Fields has kind of come along. I don't know how they feel overall about this group. I know how the outside feels about this group just in general, but I don't know how they specifically feel about it. So is there a surprise there that Castro-Fields gets a job over somebody? I don't know. Secondarily, this is the group that I'm watching big time. If somebody pops up off waivers from another team that they think is an upgrade, that would not surprise me at all if there is one or even two new corners that pop up here because there is a quote unquote surprise release from somebody else.
Yeah, this is the group that whenever the cuts come, I'm going to look at the group and say, okay, and then I'm going to expect 2 to 3 names that I don't see on there to be part of the group moving forward. This is the one there. I think whatever the first round of cut is, at 4:00, whatever that is, 2 or 3 names in this group specifically are not actually going to be listed is my concern here. And that's over the next 2 weeks, really, not just the lead up to the first week of the game or first week of the season.
I'm going to be watching this one closely. I think this one's fluid for a couple of weeks because teams also like the initial, this has come down to there's a first 53 and then there's changes after waivers. And then a couple teams play games with a couple of guys and wait a couple of days. And there's a second wave. And then after the first game, teams make maneuverings because they're trying to avoid IR situations with people. And then they make moves and you have to adjust to that. And Dan Quinn mentioned out loud, we don't ever want to be number 2 in the waiver claim again, but here we are. We need to take advantage of it. So they are open for business, and things are going to happen here. So we're trying to guess what those things are at this point.
Speaking of the waiver wire, did you hear Gerard Mayo on Boston Sports Radio yesterday about the waiver wire thing?
No, what did he say?
This one was good because Quinn said, "Oh, we don't ever want to be second again." Well, Mayo, I guess it was WEI, I think, who does their post game pressers or post game call-ins, and he goes, "Yeah, well, we're number 3 in the waiver wire, and our starting guard and tackle might not be on the team right now." Oh. He said 2 starting linemen might not be on the team right now, and everybody was like, "What? Are you kidding me?" And then all I could think of was, well, if you don't have 2 starting linemen and you're looking for one of them has to get through Washington too. And I'm like, if there's one good enough, they're coming here.
You better hope we don't like them.
That's what I was saying. I'm
right.
Like,
you better hope we don't like them, because that's my next topic.
Yeah, right.
So I'm watching Chris Paul, who they've asked to be basically a tackle the last couple of weeks. I think he's done pretty well there. And I think he's earned a position as a swing tackle, backup guard, whatever it may be. But same thing. Same, Gerard. Same. I think
right.
If the right, offensive lineman, either position pops up, maybe not center. That doesn't feel like a need, but either position that pops up, yeah, I think we're in that business too. And like, who knows? Do we like the same players that they like? I don't know. But, if Peters gets any whiff he's got the second one. He can choose them. So same. I feel the same way. The corner group, potentially the receiver group, maybe the running back group, and definitively the offensive line group. That's all I've been saying for a couple of weeks. I think 3 to 5 guys are on other teams right now that are going to end up being on our roster this year. That's what I think.
No, I agree. And it was just funny hearing Mayo say that like they're looking for 2 starters essentially. And I'm like, guy, one or both of them ain't getting past us. So good luck with that on your end, because this team's looking for the same thing. Like,
did you hear his other one on Drake May where he called him the second best quarterback on his roster?
No, I didn't see that.
Someone asked, because Jacoby got hurt at the preseason game.
Yeah.
And they asked him, in light of his injury, is Drake May definitively going to start, which I would think would be obvious. And he basically couched it by saying, well, yeah, he goes, because he's the second best quarterback on our roster.
Wow. All right. I mean,
yeah.
I guess he did. That could also be he didn't want to disrespect Brissett. I mean, I could see that. I mean, it's not totally wrong, I guess, but could have said it differently. Could have not pulled a
Twitter's not pleased. Let me put it that way.
That's a Ron move. That's a Ron statement.
It is. Yeah.
It's
guys. Yeah. That's his guys moment. Let's see. 5 or 6 receivers. We'll see. I think it's going to be 6. I think Jamison Crowder is going to make it now because I think he's the primary punt returner. I just haven't seen any evidence otherwise from anybody else. And now that Jahan is no longer here, I think it kind of opened the door to make those decisions easier. It's another position group that I'll watch. Does someone pop up that surprises them? I do feel like if it's a prominent player like Mechie, I think you got to pull off a deal, to actually get him before he hits waivers, because I think no one's going to want him to hit waivers. So if it's someone like that people want to take a shot on and are willing to give an asset up for, then like Jahan, we weren't going to waive him, I don't think. But if we had, team 1 would have picked him up, that's the way it would have gone. So we'll see how it goes from here. I'm over the surprises. I have a hard time buying the guys at the bottom end of it, like Tremaine and Tinsley. I'm having a hard time seeing them win a job, but maybe the coaches feel differently. We'll find out. I thought early in camp, Tremaine was incredible. He was making catch after catch after catch. I just didn't see it in the games. And maybe that's not fair to him, but I feel like they've got a pretty deep stable of wide receivers that they might be looking to improve on the open market. And I'm not sure that, that they're going to take the developmental guy and put him on the 53. If any of them end up on the practice squad, I wouldn't be surprised at all, but that's where I kind of end on that one. Tight end, I think the question is just 3 or 4. Do they keep Cole Turner? Because it's pretty obvious who the top 3 are. Ertz, Sinnott, Bates, or Locks, in my opinion. Do they keep a 4th? I believe they'll lose Turner to somebody else. I don't think he'll clear waivers. I think someone will pick him up. I think if you release Yankoff, I think you could probably get him to the practice squad. But so that's the choice you have to make here with Turner. I do think it's possible you will lose him if he hits the open market.
I think that's fine, though. I mean, this is a position where you only have one guy on the field for a majority of the time, and every single one of those guys ahead of him has a legitimate role. Ertz is going to do a little bit of everything. Sinnett's going to be a pass catcher. Bates is amazing as a blocker. And at the end of the day, Turner doesn't do anything better than those three guys. So, like, this is one of those ones I'm afraid to lose him, but also I get it. Like, how much can you wait on a guy for developing?
He's the one that I look at and I go, if they do waive him and they think they're going to get him to the practice squad, I think that's the one that might get picked up. So I think like that could be problematic. I want to go back to receiver just for a moment. I know everybody's freaking out and thinking Martavis Bryant's going to make the team. Like I'm going to stick with where I was yesterday and just say 20% and a low percentage of it. I kind of don't see it for how long he's been here, but I do think he's worth putting on the practice squad and developing, seeing how it goes, for at least another few weeks, a month. And then maybe, I mean, like, obviously he fits a profile. It's very different than anybody else that we have here. And if he turns his career back around where he looks like the player he was, 5-6 years ago, then I see a route to him being up on this particular roster. I just think, why do it now? He's been out of the league. No one had signed him. He just came here 2 weeks ago. I don't have any fear of losing him to another team. I think we can get him to the practice squad. So that's what I think is going to happen with him. And the last one I think is just this question: who's running back 3? Obviously, it's B-Rob and Eckler. And then, I think they've been working Allen out there because they're looking for some kind of explosiveness. I don't know where Chris Rodriguez fits into this. He got a lot of opportunities the other night against New England. I know they like Michael Wiley a lot. He's scored a couple touchdowns in the preseason. He's showing some speed. This is another position group I'll watch. Who gets cut? Like who's available out there? Is there someone they feel that they like a little bit better than who they have? I think that's a spot to kind of watch here too. Maybe it's McNichols. Do they keep more than 3 on the roster? I at this juncture, I don't know why they would, but let's just see how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing that I would point to with like Rodriguez is like he actually has game film, right? Like he was pretty good that last quarter of last season when he had to be used behind a pretty questionable offensive line. That's my only argument kind of for him. Other than that, though, like I don't think any of these other guys have kind of grabbed the position, when it's all said and done. So I'm kind of with you. This could be one that I see them plucking someone off the waiver wire to be running back 3.
All right, that's our little preview of Cut Down Day. We'll get to Jerry Jones going off and CeeDee Lamb getting cash next. Brad, watch the show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. All right, welcome back. Brad, watch the show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. So Jerry got pushed into doing something that I assumed he was going to do anyway, but he's been getting tagged by the media, and I think rightly so, over the last few weeks and few months, because he unwisely said the team was going all in when they had a terrible cap situation and had some big decisions to make, and they really didn't have any flexibility to do anything. But when he said that, the people who don't know this start yelling at him and saying, you're not going all in. Then it got to the point where we started asking, is he cheap? Like, what in the world is going on here? Because they're not signing their stars. And he gets to kind of shut everybody up, at least on CeeDee Lamb, because he made him one of the highest paid non-quarterbacks in the history of the NFL. So that one's closed and done. And I never thought that they weren't going to sign him. I think Dak is a different situation. I think Dak has got a lot of leverage on them. I think Dak is someone they don't want to give that amount of money to. For whatever reason, they don't want to do it. I don't totally disagree with that, but they have their own reasons. But this one, I'm not surprised. This is one of those where you may not like that this is the market value of this guy at this position, but if you don't sign him, somebody else will tomorrow. In fact, 10 other teams will do it.
No, my theme of this whole offseason has been the top 1% of NFL players realize that they're in the top 1%. So you have CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase, Trent Williams started yesterday too. That one is finally coming to a head, which I'm surprised people haven't talked about more. But you're starting to see this now. The players that know they can get paid do just that. They hold out. Like, we do not have these weird in-between players like we used to 10, 15 years ago, where you'd be like, who's holding out? Why is he holding out? Like, he doesn't deserve that contract. Now the guys that know that they're going to get paid, they do this. So with CeeDee Lamb, my whole thing was, had Jerry just gotten this done literally 2 months ago, the price would have been different.
It would have been lower.
He had to sign him after Jefferson got his money. So he had to sign him to a very slightly lower, but around the same number as Jefferson. This is what I didn't understand with Jerry. he should have done this 2 months ago, and it already would have come around and looked way better. And so I think that's why he's been raked over the coals over the last month, because everyone's kind of saying, dude, the market's the market, and you don't have another wide receiver in waiting that can replace him. So what are you
100%.
waiting for?
Well, in reality, this is a top 5 receiver. Like,
yes, yeah, absolutely, yes.
He's become that. A couple years ago, I was like, he's good, not great. He really developed last year, where he was top 5 receiver. And so is what it is, guy. Sorry, you got to do it.
Right.
So in the midst of all of this, and we were talking about this last week, I'm like, did he lose his fastball? Like, what is going on with this guy? Like, he's not signing these guys. He's messing up these negotiations. It's just costing him more in the end. Like, I don't get it. He keeps saying he wants to go all in, but he's not going after anybody.
Dallas Cubs.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. Like, what's going on here? And he did an interview, and I saw these quotes pop up, and I thought for sure they were fake. Like, there was like no way that they were real. But I think it was Clarence Hill, who's covered the team forever for Dallas, either Dallas Morning News or Fort Worth Star Telegram or one of those papers down there. But he's been around the team forever. And I'm just going to read one of the quotes that he said. I'm not going to show it because I'll get in trouble, by showing it. He goes, essentially asked, like, you're in your 80s now, and people are asking you about running the team. Don't you think, maybe it might be time to turn it over to somebody? And his quote was, I've done it all. If anybody can figure out how to get this S done, I can figure out how to get it done. So hell no, there's nobody that could effing come in here and do all these contracts and be a GM better than I can. That is, and I'm sure he said after that, and you could print that.
Yep. 100%. This is, who's looking down on him being proud is Al Davis. That's an Al Davis quote there of just, screw you. I'm going to do what I want. I'm the owner, and I don't think anyone else can do it better than me. And this is how it's going to be.
I'll say this too for him. Like, I know they haven't won the big one in a very long time. They've been really good, like, the last few years. Like, people poo-poo 12-win teams as if, what did he luck into that? Because he didn't. And I love to criticize them more than anybody. And I love when they screw up. I love it more than anybody. But I knew last year, I'm like, they're a team to beat in the NFC. Just go look at the roster they put together. They typically draft well. They typically coach well. Like, we're going to see this year because we rated their defensive staff. But I don't know, man. Like, I think everybody came at them because this year felt weird. And it felt a little reset-y, but they're staring down the Lamb contract, the restructure with Dak, Micah Parsons, and all he's basically saying is, I got to figure some of this stuff out because we can't keep everybody, and y'all know it. And so stop calling me cheap or telling me I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just trying to figure it out on the fly. That said, this CeeDee Lamb contract cost them more than it should have. The Dak thing has been mishandled twice. This feels very Kirk. Mishandled twice by them. It's just getting more expensive by the day. There's nothing they clearly don't want to do it, but there's nothing they can do about it. Trey Lance just threw 5 interceptions the other day, so he ain't coming to his rescue. Jer is somewhere in the middle of this where I hear him on the get off my lawn, and there's a little bit of, but your lawn isn't as manicured as it used to be, dude. Just telling you to cut it a little bit because it doesn't look right anymore.
There's also the fact, besides the Dak thing, everyone likes to talk about how Green Bay has had 3 franchise quarterbacks in a row, right? And they've drafted 2 of them in the first round and they let them sit, right? Well, like, Dallas might have the luckiest back-to-back ever. I don't think I'm going hyperbole there. They had an undrafted rookie free agent, Tony Romo, sit and develop for how many years?
Yeah.
And he steps in and is the franchise. And then they draft Dak in the 4th round, and he gets to play accidentally when Romo gets hurt.
That's right.
I can't think of a more lucky back-to-back hit on franchise quarterbacks. And like Romo, had he won one Super Bowl, I think would be in the Hall of Fame or have his number retired. Like,
when the draft popped up, it was like, I couldn't believe this stat. They hadn't used a first-round pick on a quarterback since Troy Aikman.
Exactly. And I'm like, and they've been so good.
Considering how good they've been.
Yes.
They haven't won the big ones, and that's funny. Me and Stephen A. Smith have that in common. It's very funny. But, like, they have consistently circled the wagons and put together very good teams. They've drafted very well. Look at some of these players that they have on their team. Like, they're not going to be bad this year. I don't know if they're going to be, I can't see, arrows are pointing down. I can't see them being as good.
Sure.
But they're not bad. But I love that Jerry pulled out the howitzer. You could print that.
Can I have a hot take on this one? I think Jerry is a better draft GM than Roseman is.
Ooh, I'll have to get some Philly fans on for that one. I got to think about that. Let me do a rundown on that. I need to do a little research and go look and find out. Roseman on the free agent market, watch out.
Yeah, totally. No, I'm not saying that though. But drafting, like, have you heard the Roseman thing now? Like what he does?
No.
All Roseman does, this is my favorite take ever, and even Philly fans are starting to come around on this. Roseman is like the anti-Ron, but all he does is he looks at all of the best players available when they're drafting and picks them. And then that way, the day after the draft, everyone goes, oh, he drafted perfectly. He took the best player available every single time, but he's not looking and actually like scouting into some of these picks. So like they needed a corner, right? So he took the 2 best corners in the second round, and everyone's going, oh, that's great. They needed them. But then 2, 3, 4 years down the line, no one actually says he did a bad draft when those guys don't pan out. So
I got to get my boy Kincaid or Nagandi on about this.
Okay.
Remind me of that when we have them on, because we always have them on when we play the Eagles. I'll ask them, do you think Jerry Jones is a better draft GM than Howie Roseman, and see if they're going to be honest about it. Let's see what they'll say about that.
The best part about this is it finally hit the mainstream. Like Mina Kimes the other day, when the Dotson trade happened, she literally tweeted, Howie's never going to escape the name allegations. Like, he only knows guys that have been drafted in the first round because that's like all he watches. So I was like, yes, it's finally hitting. Like, even some of the smart mind. And Mina did say, she goes, I still am a fan of Dotson. I believe in Dotson. But she was like, he's still not going to escape, these allegations now. So
one more Dallas adjacent story before I get to, I'm going to play a preview of a new podcast I did with the Commanders with London Fletcher called Booth Review that we're going to do every Monday for them. I'll play, so you'll hear from London in a few minutes. But how about Deion Sanders, huh? Oh, man. So Deion earlier this year shut down some local CBS reporter because he was mad about something, not what that reporter did, but something that CBS did, which Stephen A. Smith was suggesting had something to do with taking a scoop away from a black reporter and giving it to a white reporter. And I'd have to know more about what he's talking about, but like, I don't know. Anyway, the latest one was there's some local columnist for Denver Post, Rocky Mountain News, something like that there. And this guy goes at Deion relatively hard and like gives him nicknames, right?
Which are great, by the way. Which are
not like, they're not mean, but they're kind of Lavero-ish nicknames. Lavero.
That's what I said it on my show yesterday.
Yeah,
I said Lavero. Yeah.
He was calling Snyder Skipper Dan and all that, like that type of
Honest Ted, those things.
Yeah. Just needling. The needling nicknames that he does. And Deion basically is like, I'm never taking a question from you ever again, and shut him down. And he's dead serious. Like, it's not a joke. And he's just like, I'm out. And the reaction to it from the general media, Feinbaum, of course, this is chum for him. He gets to scream and yell, and then everybody in the SEC is like, yeah, he's a fraud. So it's like perfect for his audience. Then I saw Heather Dinich, who's a straight down the middle reporter, basically write a piece going like, this is utterly ridiculous. And was like, for years, I would scream at Joe Paterno that your quarterback stinks. And he took the question, like he at least took the question every week. And Deion, the thin skin part of it is, I think, what's getting me about him. Like, if you want to go out and you want to basically constantly seek attention, then I think you have to know, and he's lived a life of this, that there's going to be criticism that comes along with that. And as long as it's fair, and maybe some of this is just childish and that's why he doesn't like it, but as long as it's fair criticism, it's fair game, man. And the fact that like he's doing these things kind of screams to me that he knows his team isn't going to be very good. And it's almost like he's trying to get out in front of that before everybody starts saying, like, see, this guy can't run a real big program in a real big conference. That's what it screams to me, actually.
This one I have two gripes. He asked that reporter the reporter asked him some kind of question. I forget what the actual question was. Then he goes, "Hey, what's wrong with you? Like, why are you like this?" And then Dion literally said, "I'm not going to answer the question until you tell me." And it's like, dude, don't like intimidate a reporter in front of everybody. Yeah. Like, pull him to the side if you have something to say. It happens all the time in sports where you say, you know what? I think you're going a little hard at us. And you have that side conversation. But because he's Dion.
Saban used to do it. Remember? He would, like, when he'd get a couple, like, we'd always play those clips because he'd get a question or two that he hated. And then he would just rip the reporter. But you know what? I never heard that the reporter lost their credential or was told they could never ask a question again. They were allowed to show up the next week, and it was just back to business as usual, which is typical. I mean, like, we made fun of Ron forever. Guys. I'm sure he wasn't like, Jason Wright was very unhappy with Scott, but like Scott didn't lose his credential over it. He was allowed to show up and ask the questions again. Not that he should have, but and this is where, like, I've seen Livero at camp. Livero goes after that team. They give him his credential to show up. He can ask questions if he wants. Like, get over it, guys. And for Dion, it's just like, it just screams to me that he is feeling pressure of it's actually not going to go that well this year. And that's why he's doing this. It's like, I'm going to blame the media when I lose. It's very Trump, actually. I'm going to blame the media when I lose.
There's two other parts to this as well. One of them is you wanted the circus, pal. So, like, you get these guys coming to camp. Like, Saban, I think the reason why he would sound off and then everything was fine because Saban basically had the 33rd NFL team. He was team 33. So, like,
also didn't want the circus. Like, he actually he was like Belichick. He came from the less media is better.
Yes.
Like, he didn't want that. Dion is not doing that. Dion, and I understand why, he went to a place that's not Alabama. He's trying to build it into something, and he knows that it's his brand that's going to make or break it. So he had to put his brand on the line. And I totally understand that. But, look, like, the media is free to criticize when it's fair. And when you go, it's one thing to put your brand on the line and be humble about where it is. He basically ran out there and screamed, "We're going to be great quickly."
Right. Exactly.
That's your fault, dude.
Yeah.
Like, that's your fault for setting yourself up that way.
The other part of this, by the way, and that I actually think is like the degrading part is, he didn't have his credential taken away. They literally said out loud, "Oh, he can still cover the team. He just can't ask any questions."
Because they can't. That's why. Because then they're going to get into a problem with the organization. And then all of a sudden the school's going to be in some kind of fight that they don't need to be in legally that you'll never hear about. But, like, then the college football writers get involved. It's just too ridiculous to take the credential away. But he could say, "I'm not answering your questions." Or he could just say, "You can ask it, but I could just say no comment or ignore you." That's fair game for him to do that.
Right, but that's what I'm getting at on this one is, like, they're doing we would ban you, but we kind of know that's going to open up a whole other can of worms. So we're just not going to answer your questions.
Yeah. Come on, Dion. Come on, man.
Not good.
I want to love you. These little moments, it makes it hard to love you. I want to love you. All right, let me take a quick break. When we come back, I'll give you a preview of Booth Review, a new podcast that I'm doing with my radio partner in the booth on Sundays, London Fletcher. Brad, watch the show, ESPN 630 Sports Capital.